The back button works pretty well, but from a code point of view, it's a bit manual. We really don't want to be adding code to every back button. One solution is to track page changes and then simply go back in time on any back button click. This visits object will maintain a stack of visited pages. The pages are added through the add method, so let's throw that into our transition method. So how can we deal with the back button? Well, let's add a couple of extra methods. We need to remove the current page. It can be discarded, but we also need to pop the next page as well because the transition function by default adds a page to the stack. We're effectively removing it and then adding it back in again. Let's bind to all the back buttons, including ones that don't exist yet, by using the jQuery live method. Then fetch the last page and transition to it. But wait a sec, on the first load there's nothing in the stack, so we need to add something at the very beginning. We'll add an animation that is basically the same as fade, but with such a short duration that it looks like it just appears. We'll need to remove the current class from the HTML though, otherwise it won't get added in. One final thing, clicking a tab should reset the view stack. As they are top level nav items, it makes no sense for you to be able to go back from them. If we add a clear method to our visits object, we can clear the stack. So let's flick back to the app and just see whether the back button's working. Excellent. Bear in mind that at this point, our app is still running within a browser, so there's a real back button. If you tap that from a details page, the browser will take you away from our site. Not ideal. We need some way to hook into a back event. It sounds fairly easy, and it is, but probably not in the way you're expecting. We first need to modify the browser's built-in history state. HTML5 has a new feature called the History API, which lets you programmatically add pages into the browser history. We're going to add a new method called changePage, which we'll call our transition method. This new method will manage the browser history stack for us. We're going to use the window.history.pushState method. The first parameter of this method is a hash of strings that will be stored in the stack. Note that in Safari these can only be strings, objects won't work. The second attribute is the title, which we'll leave for blank at the moment, and the final parameter is the URL to add to the history. Normally this would be a proper URL that is accessible in its own right. In this example though, because we don't have a proper server that can handle that, we'll just ignore it. Let's go through and replace all the instances of transition with changePage. Now we can wire up the back button, which was the thing that made us go down this path in the first place. The History API adds a new event called onPopState, which we'll listen for. On that event, we'll pop the previous page from the visit stack and transition to it. So what of our back button? Well, let's use it to go back in time through the browser history using window.history.back. Now there is one final thing. Let's clear the history stack when a tab is clicked by going back the number of steps currently held in the history. If we do that, we should end up back at the page we started at. So let's see it in action. And look, our back button works too.